Hello, sweethearts. Welcome to Fieros Reborn. This is a piece of art I've done. It was very small when I did it originally. It was A4 in size, and then I've blown it up to A0. That's an A0 poster. Just make sure you can see the whole of it in the screen. It's called Autumn. Because I was drawing it around the time of autumn, and it was supposed to be an expression of that feeling of the last part of summer and moving into the autumn. It wasn't quite full on autumn when I was doing it, but it was just going from summer to autumn. Yeah, so I've made a massive poster of it, and I think it looks pretty cool. I think it looks strangely similar to the background of the books. That kind of hodgepodge jumble of different colours. Yeah, so I'm going to use that as the background for today's video. And I am going to stick my head in front of it now. Bing, hello. I still feel like sometimes I am an avatar of my art, as in the art's the real, the art is the real being, and I'm the fake one. I'm the picture. The art's the real person. You know, the art feels more real than I am. Somehow it feels like the art is projecting me forwards rather than the other way around. Okay, so let us talk, or let me talk, please, about my life story again. It's like Teletubbies. It is. It's like fucking Teletubbies. I'm just going to tell my story again and again and again until everything fits into place, it makes sense, and I understand it, and I can tell it easily without going off on rambles for like 5 years. So, oops. Things making weird noises really creeps me out. Let's start again. Why are there's always weird... Whenever you like use a plastic bag and then you leave it, it starts making these crinkly, crackling noises, you know, when it's settling down. It's freaky, man. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to start my... Oh god, that plastic bag is like really irritating. I'm not going to shout out a plastic bag. Oh, it's so irritating. I'm going to take it out of the room. It's actually annoying me to that point where it's making these tiny little noises. It just makes you go... Right, okay. So, let's start again. 2004. I finished my A-levels. I got AAB, Art, English and Drama. I got the B in the drama, I got the 2 A's in the English and the art, because I was good at those subjects. I was also good at drama, but I just fucked up a few things. I wasn't very good at the essay writing. And I didn't understand how to take notes. We had to take notes about the plays that we were watching. And I was watching the plays like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be noting down. How are you supposed to watch the play and note things down about the play? Like, plus I don't really know what kinds of questions I'm going to be asked anyway, so I don't understand theatre analysis, basically. I didn't understand theatre analysis. You had to kind of break down different aspects of it. The lighting, the stage, the costume, inflection, tone of voice, what else? Stylistic choices of the actors, you know, backdrop, stuff like that. And you had to even remember specific ways that the actors did stuff, and like when they raise their eyebrows or they go like this, you have to note down that sort of stuff. And I was like, number one, I don't understand it, as in I'm just watching a play. I don't sort of see all those minor details as being particularly relevant. I kind of just see it as a play, and I don't even understand it because it's fucking Shakespeare as well. We were having to do Shakespeare, watching Shakespeare and make notes on these Shakespearean adaptations as references to use in our exam questions or in our coursework or whatever, and I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing, man. I was trying to write it like an English essay, but it's like I couldn't really hang on to anything from drama and theatre because it's all very memory based. So you go, it's a live performance, you see the thing, and then that was that. It just kind of comes and goes for like 2 hours, and you're having to write essay questions about this 2 hour piece of your life that you barely remember. So, wow, who cares as well? Like, I'm writing essays about stuff that no one cares about. Like, just go and watch the play and enjoy the play. No one cares about how you're going to analyze it. It felt kind of pointless and a bit destructive in a way to analyze the plays. And I just wasn't very good at it either. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand the why. I didn't understand why. Why were we doing it? And not even that. It was more like, it was almost like there was too much analysis. So it provoked my feelings of meaninglessness and nihilism. Like, what's the point of it all? Because analysing a play that's 2 hours long, which was a boring and annoying thing to sit through in the first place, and then having to remember it and make notes of it, and bollocks, just annoying. Whereas English essays, the book is right there. You can refer to it back again. You can read that bit again. You can have a look through the book because it's there as a reference point to just say, well, if there's a question that asks you about how our relationships portrayed, they kept saying about relationships in the essay questions for English. We were doing the book The Rainbow by D.H. Lawrence, which I quite liked as a book. It was quite helpful. Andrea and I had some insights about our relationship that we mirrored or mimicked a couple of the characters in there called Will and Anna. That was another level of turmoil that we went through, which was comparing ourselves to these characters in the book and giving ourselves a complex about that as well. That because their relationship ends in the book, that our relationship was going to end in real life, and and we were being conflicting and arguing, and it was all very pain-filled, our analysis of ourselves in relation to these characters in the book. It wasn't particularly happiness inducing, because we were comparing ourselves to a destructive relationship in this book basically, rather than any positive relationships. So it wasn't very cool. Anyway, so I did well though. Overall, I was pretty good at English essays. I sort of naturally understand English essays, or understood English essays anyway. Even though there was some part of me that kind of didn't quite get what the questions meant. It was just more like, I know what they're asking me to do. I don't necessarily really believe what I'm writing or saying. It's just like something that you have to do. So I understood that that was what you had to do. Whether or not I really believed the points I was making or not is another matter. That makes sense. So like we had to kind of synthesize information within the book to make a point or a case or an argument for, to answer the question, using references from the book to display our points. It's so strange because it's like, in a way, it's just one piece of text there, and I'm just turning it into another piece of text here. So it's bizarre. It's just like two pieces of text talking to each other. Yeah. Anyway, so what? Oh yeah, but I was good at it, even though I didn't really. It's like there was always something at the tip of my brain that didn't quite understand what is the meaning of this. Like, whatever essay question it was, I always felt like I was somehow not getting it, or didn't really understand the reason for it. Like, why am I answering this question? Or more like, what does the question even mean? I'd get tripped up on the meaning of words and stuff and be like, what is a relationship anyway? Like, what does it mean when it says the meaning of? What does it mean when it says, how does D.H. Lawrence convey the meaning of infinity within the passages in the rainbow, and you go, I don't know, what are these words? What are these words? What does this mean? And I was just like, had this small brain frantically trying to like comprehend the forces way bigger than myself. I don't understand. What are these words? I know what they mean, separately, but do I really know what they mean? And then I'm looking through this book and going, okay, well, let's pick out some bits that relate to that word in the question about relationships. So you look in the book and you go, relationships, okay. Well, there are many relationships portrayed in this book. Relationships. There was just always some part of me that just didn't feel like I was getting it right, or didn't feel like I'd understood something fundamental about it, but that I was just doing it because it was an essay question and you had to do it. As I say, like, I don't think I really believed what I was writing. I never really believed that the points I was making were valid. I was just doing it as a mechanical kind of task thing, which is stupid, really, because I think that if anything, if you're going to get anything from literature, what you should get, this is my opinion, obviously, what you should get is your own response. You should literature is there for your own enjoyment, your pleasure, and to stimulate your thinking and stimulate your ideas about life, broaden your horizons, whatever, open your mind up to new ideas and feel things and learn things and gain insight into the human condition and feel for the characters, empathize with the characters, that will help enrich your life in your understanding of yourself, in your understanding of other people, in your understanding of the world at large. That's what I think literature is there for. And there's also that intangible quality as well that literature brings, which is the sort of spiritual dimension of literature, where there's something you may not quite understand why it's enriching and why it's beautiful or brilliant, because that's the artist, as in the writer, the author, is putting something of their soul into the work, and so you're connecting on a deeper, unseen, unheard, unknown spiritual level with the ethos of that person. So you're connecting with their spirit, you're connecting with their soul, and they're sharing something of their creativity with you and their life force, their life energy with you. And so when you get a book that you really resonate with, because you resonate with the author's style or the author's intentions or their feelings or whatever, that when you get that, you feel like you're in touch with something bigger than yourself, because the author's channeling something beyond themselves when they're doing they're writing good work. So we feel like with literature, we feel like we're getting recognition of our humanity, I suppose, by reading good literature. And just thrill and excitement and all that stuff. But then you have to write an essay about it, and it's weird because you're thinking, like, why am I analysing something that's a piece of beauty or a piece of richness, and I'm having to pick it apart and construct rational or logical arguments about things. It's just a very strange way of approaching talking about literature, talking about books. So it just feels a bit analytical. Anyway, but I did well at literature at school, and good. That's probably why I write books now. Even though I've had a strange relationship with books over my life. For one thing, when I was in primary school, I had a terrible relationship with reading. I was a good reader, I was a strong reader, I was an intelligent reader. I got through those books that say stop, look, listen, hello, all those ones. I was wicked at them. I got through them straight away. Stop. So they teach me this word. Next page. Stop. Oh, okay. Next page over. Stop. Well, let me guess. Stop. Yes, I knew that was happening. Remembering it. Okay, I got it. Right, and then you pick up the next book and it says, hello. Those books are wicked. And then you turn the page over. Hello. See what you did there? Next page over. Oh, it's a fireman. He's saying, "Hello, haha, hello." Now I know what's going on. And the final page. Bye. Oh no, that's a new word. No, I don't think they have. They only have one word per book on those ones. But I was pleased with those. That was level 1 or level 0 or something. Level then like move on to level 2, level 3, level 4. I love it when they have things in levels because you can level up like in a role-playing game. You know, when things are in levels and you feel like you're making progress in life, and you get your self-esteem raised as you go through the levels. You're like, I'm a level 4 now, I'm a level 5 now, I'm a level 7 now, level 12 now, you know, you're like, psh. I might get some of those books to just cheer me up. Be like, I definitely know how to say stop. I know what hello means. Do I really though? I do. It means greetings. Yeah. Bye. Yeah. So those are cool. So I was good at those. Oh yeah, but it was in year 4, I believe, and this teacher asked me this question about reading, which was, do you read novels? And I said, I don't know what a novel is. Right? Just bear with me for a moment because I'm not stupid. I wasn't thick. I just had never heard a book, storybook, being called by that word, novel. No one had ever said that word to me before, novels. So I'd only ever read them as books. Like that was the word I'd use for them, books, storybooks. And I've been reading loads of them. I was always reading loads of novels, but I didn't know they were novels. They were just called books. So I got put in this kind of remedial reading class, which I felt was a gross misunderstanding of the situation. I got put in this weird reading class where I had to go to the library randomly with some of the, pardon my language, with some of the divvy kids, right? I was like, why am I here? Because I don't know the fucking word novel, and I didn't, but I have been reading novels, I just didn't know that's what they're fucking called. So you've just shoved me in a div class because I didn't know this one word, and if you'd bothered to actually investigate further than that, it was just like she'd asked me the question, do you read many novels? And I go, what's a novel? And she goes, oh my god, we better put him in the div class. I'm like, well, if you'd asked me a second question, like, you know, books, storybooks, I'd be like, oh yeah, got loads of them, read loads of them. I'm always reading. So she put me in a div class. And I never forgive her for that fucking teacher. I think she was like a learning, she was doing like a training course, whatever. I think she was only there for a while, that teacher, you know. There was like a couple of them came in for like half a year or a term or something, and they were just there, and they went, oh, better put you in a div class because you don't know what novels are. I was like, what? Who even are you? Where have you come from? Where's my normal teacher? What are you doing here? Why have you suddenly taken over the reading thing? So yeah, I was pissed off at that. I was really like, I can remember my little face as this kid going, what has happened to me? I've been put in the div class for no reason, and I have to go to the library and sit there reading extra books on top of the books I already read at home anyway. It's just such a stupid misunderstanding. I was really pissed off about it. I don't think that it got back to my parents though, because I think maybe I was ashamed of the situation, and like you kind of just forget stuff as well. As in, so you come home from school and you've completely forgotten everything that happened in the day at school, and you're just like, yeah, I'm playing computer games now, or I'm going to go play football in the garden, or I'm going to whack a tennis ball around, or I'm going to like annoy my brother and chase him around the house. So you go to school, and your parents ask, I don't know, how was school? And you go, yeah, whatever, woo! And then you're just like whacking a tennis ball against the wall, or I don't know, trying to make a boat out of wood and glue. That you found in the garage, in the shed, you know, stuff like that. I had a neglected, sad childhood. I had quite a good childhood, I think. I think my childhood is better than my adulthood, which is probably why I don't really want to talk about my childhood too much just yet, because there's a lot in there. It's good stuff mainly. I remember a lot of good stuff. There is some neglectful feelings where I feel like I'm just dossing around by myself, and my parents don't really want to play with me. They're more interested in sitting in front of the TV or going and doing their own thing. So it would be nice to have. I don't really have many memories of like me playing with my parents, and then I've got, but then maybe that's not true. Maybe there are more memories in there, and I just am still on a bit of a downer trip, and I'd rather remember the neglect because it makes it makes me feel like a proper good victim if I remember all the neglect. But I do definitely have memories where I was kind of like really bored in my room, like not feeling good about being by myself and feeling lonely and lost and stuff when I was younger. But then I've got some great memories of playing out in the garden, and playing with my parents in the garden, tennis ball, playing with my brother, all sorts of fun stuff that I enjoyed when I was a child. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to the story. So 2004, story of my adult life. 2004, finished my A levels, did well, was unhappy with myself because I was a perfectionist and I wanted to achieve the best A thing in the whole world, but I didn't. And time moved on, but there was part of my psyche that was not happy with the B there. And it's so strange how that little feeling of imperfection actually affected me and stayed with me, and how I remembered it. It's sort of like, because I thought of myself as being this perfect student, at least in the academic part. And I'd always got the highest marks, I'd always been top of the class, and so I built up this idea of myself as being this high achieving person who just will unfailingly get the best marks. And then it came to A levels, and in fact, in my first year of A levels, the AS levels, I did really badly. I got a couple of D's, badly by my standards, right? I got a couple of D's, a B and a C or something, and I was like, whoa, I might have even got an E in one of the things because my artwork was quite behind because I was having too much sex with Andrea to do my work properly. And my emotional life was all over the fucking place in sixth form, so my academic life was suffering a bit. I was trying to run my band, do my studies, be in school plays, and have a girlfriend all at once, while my emotions and spots and stuff were everywhere, and my libido was starting to kick in hardcore. So it was a mess. It was a mess, and my academic life suffered because of it. And I got told off. I got told off. Well, I got told off actually in GCSEs by the head of year. He was doing this series of tellings off. He would tell off pretty much everyone. I think he told off everyone individually to try and motivate them to succeed. And to be fair to him, it worked. He pulled me aside, told me that my grades were suffering in certain areas, and he gave me this big speech. His name was Mr. Curtin. He gave me this big speech of something like, do you want to look at yourself in the mirror when you're 30 years old or something, or 28 years old or 30 years old, 10 years from now, and do you want to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I didn't do what I was capable of and I got D's in my GCSEs. Do you want to have that hanging over you? And he told me off, and no one liked him. No one liked that guy. He was a dick. But probably the thing with like dickish teachers, right, is I think some dickish teachers are misunderstood. I think that some dickish teachers are actually quite good, for what they represent, as in you have to have a dickish teacher so that you've got something to hate. But also I think they're misunderstood sometimes because teachers that are a bit firm or a bit strict or over disciplinarian, I think they're misunderstood because from a pupil's perspective, we just hate them because we find them to be too hard or whatever. And we want softy. We want to get away with everything, right? But I think there is a place for that kind of disciplined teacher who is playing the bad guy role, who is hard on punishment in terms of making you stay behind for detention and things like that. I think that's necessary. But at the time when you're at school, you don't really realise that there is a reason that they're behaving like that. There's a reason that there are punishments such as detention or expulsion or whatever, some sanctions of some kind, social sanctions. You have to sit outside the headmaster's office, stuff like that. There are reasons for those punishments that I think at the time you don't really understand why, because you're more interested in your own immediate self pleasure and self gain, whatever, having fun. And I think that the reason that those teachers are a bit harder, and not all of them are like that, but there are ones that are certainly, they play more of that bad guy role, is, well, one thing, it's their way of like keeping control over the class and probably keeping control over themselves because teaching's a fucking hard job. Whoa. And you can tell when you've got those, if you've got a really wimpish teacher, the kids will just run all over them and just nothing will happen, or loads of stupid shit will happen and no work will get done. So there's a need for those kinds of disciplined teachers. And in fact, although I didn't recognise it at the time, it was probably quite good that I had that conversation with Mr. Curtin, because he put the fear of God up my arse. Not quite, he didn't put anything else up my arse. But yeah, he motivated me to do well, basically. And it worked. And I did really well. And also I had the same thing with another teacher. He was my form tutor in secondary. Sorry, he was my form tutor in sixth form. And at the time, I was trying to run this band and have this girlfriend with Andrea. My girlfriend was Andrea, whatever. Yeah, and still trying to do my A levels and succeed in those. And this teacher was my form tutor for the 2 years in sixth form, and his name was Mr. Hallows. Now, he'd just been a physics teacher to me beforehand, but in the sixth form he became form tutor as well. So we had half an hour every morning and 20 minutes in the afternoon or something, or 10 minutes in the afternoon. I can't remember how it worked actually. I think you have you have a morning thing. Then do you have like a little tutor time in the afternoon or something? I can't remember how it went, Definitely a morning thing. You always had a morning tutorial where they take the register, you have a little bit of a chat between yourselves, and then they dismiss you off to your first lessons. It's weird. School is weird. It's such a strange structure. Anyway, so I had him, this physics teacher, and he'd been a physics teacher who was okay. He was all right. He used to crack silly jokes, and one of them was something about, oh God, what was it? So if you have a black hole, then you can have a white hole. I can't remember. He used to make silly jokes, basically. Dark matter, light matter, antimatter. I don't know. He was always making stupid physics jokes. Which was fine. He was an okay teacher. He was a bit bland, but he was there. He did his thing. He wasn't one of those teachers who you go, that teacher was wicked. He was just kind of like, yeah, he was all right. He wasn't particularly harsh or cruel or mean, and he wasn't particularly great and fun and amazing and memorable. He was just bog standard teacher, right? Neither this nor that. He was okay, and he told silly jokes. But he sat me down. I think he had to do this, for all the students who were not pulling their weight. And so he sat me down, and I believe my dad was there as well. It was like a parent, teacher, student meeting thing. And we sat down in one of the little physics technician room type of things. And he said to me something like, look, you've got to make a decision. Because I don't know what he is now, but he was a musician in the church that he went to. He played guitar. Now, I didn't even know that at that time, but he played the classical guitar for his church when they did whatever, performances. And that was news to me, for one thing. It was also news to me that he even went to church. Didn't know he was religious. And I also thought, how can you be a physicist if you're religious? Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, because my dad was always into his physics, and he was atheist, so I just assumed that everyone who was into physics must be atheistic, but not necessarily, as we well know. Anyway, so he pulled me aside, invited my dad in as well, to tell me off, kind of thing, or not really to tell me off. It was trying to motivate me to work harder and get things done and achieve my potential. Pardon me. So we're sat in this little room, and he was basically saying to me, "Look, you've got to make a choice between your band and your studies because you can't do both." And in the meeting, and also afterwards, I was saying to him, "I believe I can do both, and I will do both." And I remember coming out of the meeting going, "Bloody bollocks to him, you know, fuck him. I will fucking do both, and I'll do both well." I probably didn't swear, but I just had that feeling of like, "Oh, I'm going to prove him wrong. I can do this. I'm up to this, you know." So that worked. It worked. And there was a marked increase in my grades after that point. So these little talks that you get from teachers, I think they work. I think they're pretty good. But at the time, you're like, "Oh, fuck this. Why have I been pulled? Why have I been singled out?" You know. But at the time, it worked really well for me to be kind of told off. Yeah. I mean, I'd never been the person to get into trouble, like proper trouble. I'd always been a high flying student who was always a good boy. That was it's one of my biggest needs, to be told I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. I am a good boy. I am a good boy. I'm a good boy. I'm good. I am a good boy. And I need to just say that to myself in order to feel okay in life. And I think that most of my activities have some element of me wanting to be told I'm a good boy. I want recognition. I want approval. I want people to say, "Yes, you're good, Ross. Yes, you're good. Yes, your videos are good. But more importantly, you are good. You're a good boy. Have a biscuit." You know, I think being told I'm good is my replacement for genuine love and affection, because my parents, especially my mum was not really that good at touchy-feely cuddles and stuff like that. She was more like that with my brother, I think. But I feel like I missed out on some of those cuddles and stuff. So I think that some of my activities in life, or maybe even a lot of my activities, are stemming from this need to get reassurance, to be nurtured, to be cared for. And I have found that doing artwork and music is a way that I substitute for real intimacy and connection and affection and warmth, because at some point I learned that I could get a similar feeling to that love feeling, a nurturing feeling, from getting approval from other people instead. So I'd get praise, being told I'm good, and that was sort of close to the feeling of being loved and approved of and accepted. But what that meant is that I only felt loved and approved of or happy if I was doing well academically or in the artistic stuff that I was doing. So basically what I'm saying is that my love for myself was conditional on the things I do or did. Anyway, so I feel like we're getting stuck in the sixth form territory again. So I need to kind of move the story on again. Why do I want to spend so much time talking about my sixth form life when it's majorly over? I'm 33. Had my birthday yesterday. I'm 33 years old. Fucking hell, that is good though, eh? That is a good piece of work. Took me a number of years to be able to do that. On that kind of scale of intensity, and part of me still thinks that's rubbish. But part of me thinks, why has it taken me this many years to be able to do that? It's simple. Anyone could do it. You know, I could have done that years ago. Why didn't I do it years ago? I think it's more like the question of stamina, of having to stick out a project long enough to see it through to completion. Like, I've done stuff like that on a smaller scale. Yeah, so I don't know, self-esteem issues as well, isn't it? Like not feeling like my art is worth anything because I don't feel like I'm worth anything because my life has just made me feel like I'm not worth anything. Yeah. Sad, really, isn't it? Anyway, 2004, I had this relationship with Andrea. I was confused about my sexuality during that, but eventually the relationship ended anyway, so what the fuck, who cares? She cheated on me over there in my aura, still over there. She's over there, cheating on me with Alan in the halls of residence in the in Gower Street, London, near Euston. In case you wanted to know, yeah. 81 Gower Street, I think it was. So, and I helped her move in there. So I felt kind of bitter about that as well, because, you know, I'm thinking about that now, that I moved her in, helped her there, and was in a relationship with her, and she couldn't even be fucking honest enough to fucking tell me what she'd been up to, and I had to find it out myself. That's shit, isn't it? That is shit. Which is why I think that after that point, I had a guilt complex about being dishonest in relationships. So for me, I've always, since that point, been really, really honest with how I feel and my thinking in relationships, and that's not always been good. It wasn't really good for the Charlie relationship, but moving forward in time, the more honest I became, the more okay I became with being honest, if that makes sense. So I realized that I can be honest and I'm not going to die. I can tell people the truth, even if it's negative, and I'm not going to die. And I can handle people's negative responses to my honesty, because I know who I am and I'm centered in myself. So even though it might be hard for other people to hear my honesty, and it might be hard for me to actually express that honesty, other aspects are, I know that it is not always wise to be honest straight away when something has happened, because there's you need to have a feeling of it being the correct moment, the right moment to tell someone something important. And there needs to be this space for the other person to receive that information, so they can kind of process that and deal with it, whatever. So sometimes I don't always say, and sometimes it's not necessary to be brutally honest with someone. You don't need to tell everyone everything that's in your head at all times, you know, because a lot of the stuff that goes in your head is just going to fade anyway. So what does it matter? And I do have a feeling that life is constantly renewing and processing itself. So something that seems like it's disastrous now, 3 weeks down the line or a month down the line, you might be like thinking, oh. So the intensity of something in terms of an event that has affected you, the intensity of something might be really big when it first happens, and you think, oh God, I can't believe it. And then, you know, the next week it's like, oh, I still wish that hadn't happened. Then the week after that, you're like, stupid. And then like the month later, you're like, what? Oh yeah, that. You know, and and I feel as though in my life anyway, at this time, I feel like I process stuff so quickly. It's as though time is just rushing. And so many things just happen, and I just go, okay, yeah, fine, just process that, process it. You know, I've had about 4 people die in near, you know, around me kind of thing, friends of family, acquaintance, a member of the family, like on the outskirts of my immediate family. So my aunt's mum died this year. 2 friends of the family died this year, and then an acquaintance of mine who I did a bit of work with, musical work, died this year. So 4 people died this year, right? And that has been difficult to process, because every time I'm just kind of getting over the one who'd died, and another couple of people die, and then another one dies, and I'm like, yeah. It's hard. That was hard, man. That was quite depressing time. No one's died for a little while now, so that's all good. Last person who died was in August, I think it was, and it's already whooshed along to December. So, you know, I just feel like time is really rushing on, and I process things quite quickly. Because, you know, in a way, if the more intense your emotions are, the slower time feels. So if I was really grieving hard for that last acquaintance, and it wasn't an acquaintance, let's say it was a deep, close friend, if I was really grieving hard, it would have felt like these last 3 months would have been like really slow. But because I process things quite quickly, it feels like time has gone really quickly as well. And maybe that's why I'm spending so much time talking about this particular period in time in my life between the 2004 and 2014, because my processing abilities were just not there for those events. So there's a lot of stuff that got stuck inside me. All these memories the memories from those periods of time in my life feel much stronger and more difficult to deal with and full of energy, like they're packed full of all this information inside them. And whereas like things that have been happening recently have a feeling of thinness, there's not so big or important, and I'm not making new major life decisions based upon them, whereas in my earlier life everything was like new major life decisions all the time, so it felt bigger and whatever. Yeah, okay, let's start again. 2004, A-levels, finished. Got a car for my 18th birthday from my gran on my mum's side. We call her Granny. She likes to be called Granny rather than anything else. Grandma or Gran or Nana or whatever. Anyway, so that's Granny. She gave me a car. Again, part of me feels like I wish I hadn't been given so much. I wish I'd had to earn that car instead. That maybe my financial situation would have been better if I'd been made to work harder. But then there's the other part of me as well that's in conflict with that kind of feeling, which was say like, I didn't want to do any work, so I'm glad that I got given free shit. You know, I didn't want to be doing stupid jobs, earning stupid money, because I wanted to be focusing on my band and my creativity. And if I'd been able to focus on my band and my creativity more, I might have been making money from my band and my creativity more if I hadn't have been forced to do stupid jobs that I didn't want to do. But then another aspect of it is, if I hadn't been forced to do stupid jobs, I would have never had any money, because my parents weren't going to give me random money, so I needed money. So I wouldn't have been able to do the band if I didn't have the fucking jobs. So it's all a mess. You can't have it either way. You can't have it any way you want, mate. Can't do it. Rubbish. I need a drink. Right. She cheated on me. It all went to tits, bollocks up. It went bollocks titsing up in. Although we did watch The Shawshank Redemption together. Fine. Around someone else's house. Of a friend of hers from uni. And I fancy that girl. I think her name was Christine. Whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Literally, who cares? But I remember fancying this other girl. She was pretty. She had blonde hair. And I was starting to see a new side of Andrea that I hadn't seen before, which was a positive side. But then she was cheating on me. So, ugh. And I also remember we like rolled some guy up in toilet roll. Or maybe it was me. Was I rolled up in toilet roll? I don't know. I just remember that I was trying to get involved with her and her uni friends, right? And I guess I felt like I was trying to get into a club that I wasn't really a part of, because she already had those uni friends and I was just showing up every weekend or something, on a Friday or Saturday to hang out with her. And I'm like, she knew everyone and she knew everyone really well, and she had these relationships, friendships, well, a relationship, but friendships building with these people. And then I come in as the boyfriend guy and I'm like the outsider trying to get in. So I felt that feeling of being the outsider trying to get in. Yeah. Oh man. Now I'm getting other weird memories of spending time with Steph after she was in Silent Dawn. Go around to her sister's house. They all lived in one house for a little while in Uxbridge, near Brunel University. And that's bizarre. Oh, some weird things. Just weird little fractured little memories there. Okay, so I got this job at Outback because I needed a job because my car was guzzling up my money. I'd got this tax rebate of 800 quid from Legoland when the season ended, and that money was running out. The band was going okay, but not okay really, because our drummer was not being able to go to rehearsals so much. So we were thinking, we've got to get a new drummer. So I started looking for a new drummer. Now this feels like starting to feel like maybe I'm losing touch with the actual reality of the situation, because I've told the story so many times. I'm going to have the memory of calling up drummers, and I have the memory of feeling guilty about the fact I was calling up drummers behind Chris's back. Yeah, and also I remember I told this story. I used to tell this story, this part of the story afterwards. You know, like I remember having this part of the story about the Krista drummer not it not working out with him and the band falling apart. I used to tell this story to people to explain to them because I was a musician. They wanted to know like, am I in a band? And I always had to say no at that time after a bit because and then I would explain to them why I'm not in a band because the fact that our drummer couldn't carry on because he was doing A levels because he's younger than us. And you know when you have those kind of stock stories that you have to tell us about certain things. For example, like let's say you've got a new job and then you meet an acquaintance who you haven't met for ages, and they go, "Oh, what are you up to these days?" And then you have to say that same story, like, "Oh, I'm working at such and such place, and it's a great new opportunity for me," or whatever. And you roll out your kind of standard story about something. Well, that was one of my standard stories, which was like, okay, I'm not in a band right now because my band broke up because of difficulties with our drummer, and the bassist decided that he couldn't handle it, so we just couldn't carry on. So that was like one of my stock stories. But I feel like perhaps the stock story has now got more weight to it than the actual feeling and understanding of the memory of it. So like my understanding of what happened is more based on the stock story than it is based on me remembering the actual things that happened. If that makes sense. Maybe. I don't know. So yeah, so okay, let's put myself into the outback, rushing around, uh, taking orders, being an annoying waiter sometimes by spending too much time with people at the table, trying to get to know them and stuff, trying to promote my band at that time to customers. Yeah, and also I was like trying to design merchandise for us, like T-shirts. So I wanted this T-shirt of the atom bomb explosion, a mushroom cloud explosion, right? I wanted these T-shirts of that because I was starting to get into war and the fact that war was bad. You know, I think I'd watched Gandhi, the film Gandhi. Um, yeah, and I was starting to get into that and into non-violence and things. Oh, I remember Jim and we were walking about in Staines together at some point in the summer. Uh, and it might have even been after that time I got really fucking stoned and pranged out and thought that I was going to become Hitler because I'd figured out this new universal global referendum method of voting on things. I thought, oh, maybe I'm just a Hitler dictator person because I want to impose my ideas of things onto the world. And even though it does sound like it would be better, but maybe that's because I think that it'd be better. That means I'm a bad person because I think that I'm better than everyone else and my opinions and political ideas are better than everyone else. It might have been on that occasion that when I woke up in the morning, we went round to Staines. I don't know, or yeah, it must have been Staines. Was it Staines? Yeah, it was Staines. We went to Staines, and was it Staines? Yeah, it must have been Staines. It wouldn't have been Ashford because there's nothing in Ashford to go to. So we were in Staines. Sorry, just conferring with my own memories. We were in Staines, and this Hare Krishna guy came up to us and said Garanga, which is the thing they say, and he handed me this book, this Hare Krishna book. Not me, he handed Jim the book because I wasn't really interested. I was like, and Jim was like, yeah, all right, blah, blah, blah. And so Jim took the Hare Krishna book, which I should look into the Hare Krishna book. I don't know which one it was, but yeah, Hare Krishna book. They have got a couple of them. But which one was it? Which one was it? You know, it had these kind of cool pictures inside. It might have even been the Bhagavad Gita, for all I know. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. But at that time, I was not interested in it. So there was this book that came along. I think it probably was the Bhagavad Gita, actually. And it got into Jim's hands. I was like, me. And like me. But I don't think Jim even read it. But I think he thought it was cool to be interested in it, rather than actually being genuinely interested in it. That's just my understanding of it. Anyway, so we got given that hit, and Jim took it, and I went, yeah, but that's interesting because I could have got into my spirituality a lot earlier if I'd actually read that book. I didn't. What else? Oh God, I'm so bored of this time period. All right, so then Charlie came along. He started pursuing me, wanted to get with me. I was debating about my sexuality and myself anyway. I was being chivied on by my friend Sam. He said, like, why don't you check out the whole gay thing? You know, you never really figured it out. You've always been a bit concerned about it, so why don't you check it out? So we arranged to go to this party thing and set up a little date where Charlie and I were gonna experiment sexually. Well, I was gonna experiment. He knew he was gay. He'd always knew he was gay since he was like 7 or 8 years old or something. I'd never known anything about my sexuality. I'd never given it a fucking label. The first thing, I suppose, the things I became aware of was that I was attracted to women or attracted to girls, but I'd never had a label for it. And when labels started coming along, it was that you had to fancy women or you were called gay. And so there was a fear of doing anything that was considered gay, and there was this overemphasis on pushing yourself into heterosexual character category, whatever, both. and even though I was heterosexual, I was afraid of the gay thing, and the fear of being judged and the fear of being called gay was turmoil inducing. It induced turmoil because it sort of put these limits on your behavior, and you had to really watch your behavior all the time. I had to watch my behavior all the time, in case I did something that might be considered gay, and get some taunting about it, and feel like shit, and feel like you're in trouble somehow, you've made a mistake, or you feel like you're being picked on and stuff. So I think that's where all this issues came from. It's just like taunting and things. So Charlie and I had our sexual experiment. Then I told him I loved him. Whether I did or not, I'm not sure. But let's just say I fell in love with him, and I fell into guilt with him, where I felt like I couldn't leave the relationship, and I felt like I was just being pulled along in something that I didn't really want to be in, but I felt like I had to be in, and I was committed to being in, but I didn't actually want to be in, and that was a real problem for me, because that was what was creating so much turmoil inside me, was these conflicting forces of my desires to leave, and my desires to be with women, and my desires to just, as I say, get out of the relationship, and my feeling of guilt or entrapment or enmeshment, which was saying I'm not allowed to have these desires, so I'm not allowed to want to leave. I must want to stay, even though I don't want to stay. There's this impulse that was like a trap bubble on me that said, you're not supposed to have these selfish desires to leave the relationship. You're supposed to love this person, and you're supposed to stay with them because you've said you're committed to him. You need to uphold the relationship, and you're not supposed to be thinking about women, and you shouldn't be attracted to women anymore because you've decided and told everyone that you're gay, so you're not allowed to have feelings towards women. You have to change your whole thinking structure. You have to deny any feelings about women. You have to deny any wanking about women. You have to completely overhaul your actual sexual identity to fit in with this new one that you've created for yourself. I'm so sick of this story. I'm so fucking bored of it. And that's good. That's a good sign. Okay, but so Charlie was a bit of a dick. He was insecure, he was whiny, he was needy, he was complaining, he was a perfectionist. He would always find the thing that was wrong rather than the thing that was good in a conversation or in anything. He was very argumentative. I was very argumentative. I was very self-absorbed. I was richly absorbed with my own thinking, and thinking that my thinking was amazing. and that everything I did was amazing. And Charlie would feed into that as well by saying I was amazing. He would always say this particular way of appraising my efforts in whatever it was, which was, it's genius, but that was something he used to say a lot. He'd say, "Oh, it's definitely genius, but," and then list a whole load of problems or things to improve upon or whatever. And I just really just wanted him to say, "It's amazing, I love it, thanks very much." But he would always say, "It's genius, but flawed. It's genius, but there's a lot of stuff wrong with it." So he was both trying to build me up and tear me down, and it became like eventually he was just more trying to tear me down. He also started putting mental roadblocks in the way of me doing the things I wanted to do. For example, I wanted to go and put a show up in Edinburgh with my comedy at one point with this other guy, and we were thinking of doing that, and I was thinking of doing it separately actually, I think. But Charlie was always negative about me leaving him for any length of time because he was desperately afraid that I'd go and hook up with someone else, which I probably would. But he was such a trapping person. He really enforced the relationship upon me, and like couldn't leave me alone. He always had to be texting me or calling me and seeing where I was, and it was that kind of possessive relationship. I remember being busking, and having to pretend that I was happy to see him when he showed up randomly to watch me busking, and like, he always wanted to. He was that person who fed into my artistic ego, so he was always feeding into me as this genius type of artistic genius person, musical or artistic genius, right? So he was always like interested in that side of me, my work, my creativity, and he was just kind of a fanboy, really. He was a fanboy of what I was doing, and he was trying to encourage me in that line of things. But therefore, the relationship was focused around me as this narcissistic genius person, and so he poured all his energy and attention into that part of me rather than into the me part of me, if that makes sense, about our relationship being about us as people. No, it was about me as an artist. And he was always deflecting attention onto me instead of having any attention put onto him. So it's like he was encouraging my narcissism by just codependently only being absorbed in my issues and pretending as though he didn't have any needs as well. And then conversely, he would get randomly really whiny and needy and pedantic and petulant, and perfectionistic. So if something small went wrong, according to him, he would have a big drama moment about it, way overreacting. And we were always arguing. He had this. He kind of couldn't allow me to have my own life choices and my own life. Basically, he wanted everything to go through him. So every decision I made, he'd be upset if I hadn't told him, and I felt so trapped. I couldn't even. It's like I couldn't spend a minute doing something that I wanted to do unless I accounted for it to him. So I had to tell him everything. I had to tell him where I'd been. I had to tell him like who I'd been with. I had to tell him what I was doing, and he had to know in advance as well what I was going to do. So it just created this real force field of a trap, like I'd just been put in a cage. Because, well, when you have to report to someone all the time about where you are and what you're doing and what you've been thinking even and how you've been feeling, when you've got that level of scrutiny and observation and possession from someone else, I mean, I felt like my life wasn't my own anymore, and I didn't have any freedom. Didn't have any freedom to just do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, because I always had to tell him. So it was like, if everything I do has to be accounted for and has to be reported back to him to check if it was okay by him, and every decision I've had to run past him because he wanted to know everything in advance and stuff, that it just meant that like I wasn't allowed to be myself. I wasn't allowed to have the freedom to be my own individual person, because there was always this second consciousness, a second conscience, sorry, this second person who I was having to think about all the time, because he was going to be pissed off at me about various things if I didn't do them according to what he wanted. So it just meant that I couldn't be myself anymore, and I couldn't see my friends, and I couldn't spend time with my family when I wanted to, because everything had to go by him, and we had to have a kind of argument about it if I wanted to do something independent of him, because I didn't. It kind of became habituated that I would have to run things past him. So what that meant was, I stopped doing anything independently of him, and I had to tell him everything. So eventually I ended up feeling majorly trapped in the relationship. I realised he was being possessive, but far too late. And I just felt like he was inside my head, you know? I just felt like I couldn't have my own thoughts without them bashing up against him and his thoughts about what I was thinking. So it's enmeshed, you know, and trapped. So to be myself and to do what I wanted to do and to have my own thoughts and feelings and desires was not allowed, because he would take everything personally. If it wasn't positive or favourable towards him, he would be upset with me and feed that back to me. So it's just this big back and forth thing where I couldn't actually just have my own experience. I could not have my own feelings. I could not have my own perceptions. I could not have my own thoughts without there being this second conscience, if that makes sense, this second awareness, an awareness of this other person's response. So if I was thinking something, I would be aware of how Charlie is going to respond to me if I tell him this. Or I feel like Charlie's presence inside my actual own mind at that point. I feel him judging me. I feel him telling me that I shouldn't be thinking that way. I feel him pressuring me in a way to be thinking differently. So, and I feel anxious. I'm just putting myself in that position. I feel anxious about the fact that I just want to be myself. I just want to I want to do what I want to do, and I want to govern my own life. And I feel like I have to run everything past him, so it's almost like he's governing my life, and I'm only allowed to do the things that he says I'm allowed to do, stuff like that. So it was a really fucking nasty relationship. I ended up just being like stuck in this little summer house that we were living in by myself for most of the time, because I didn't feel like I was allowed to do anything. I didn't even feel like I was allowed to play my guitar in the house while he was away at work. I don't know why, but I didn't feel like I was allowed to meet up with my friends. It didn't help that I was back from uni over the summer, and or over the winter or whatever. I don't know when it was exactly, but I was just by myself, and he wouldn't let me go home to my own family house, which is what I should have done really in that situation. I should have just gone home and been here instead of over there by myself like a fucking dick, so that I could have had some company. But he was pressuring me to stay with him because he was saying that I had to cut the strings, cut the ties, cut the mummy strings or something like that, and don't be a mummy's boy and things. Which, okay, on the one hand is a reasonable idea, but on the other hand, I was becoming isolated from my family because of it, and feeling like I wasn't even allowed to come back, and I wasn't allowed to call this my home. He was making me call the place that we were living my home, and he would like pressurize me about that and kind of tell me off about calling this home. And I was like, well, this is my home. And so he was always trying to kind of enforce this relationship upon us, in a very Nazi type of way, you know, like an imposition of the relationship rules, an imposition of the relationship structure and the relationship roles. He was trying to bring about the, you know, like a social relationship where you have certain roles that you play in a relationship, the adult relationship. He was trying to enforce this thing, and I was trying to be authentic and genuine and be myself and figure myself out. Yeah, and as I say, like, things I started noticing about him that led me to want to actually leave him. For one thing, his tantrums were a nightmare. Throwing things around the room, just difficult. He got hysterical. He'd scream and stuff. He was just not a nice person to be around sometimes. I was afraid of him. I was afraid to be honest to him. And I found myself actually having a lot of negative thinking about him, not wanting to be with him. Just the sickly feeling as well. It's just sickly, infectious feeling of sickliness in my head area, like he's invaded my head area. Then also the fact of us, the gay sex, and me not wanting to have the gay sex, and I felt pressured to continue to having gay sex, and every time it came to it, I was always like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And it was coming to the point where he was pulling it out of me, if that makes sense. So he was, I don't mean literally, but not, no, he was, every time I had sex with him, it was because he was getting needy for it and he wanted me to do it and I didn't want to do it, but he would like drag it out of me, if that makes sense. So he'd like kind of force me, I suppose, emotionally force me, or put some kind of emotional pressure on me to have sex rather than doing it because we were enjoying it or wanted it. I didn't want it, and I was I also felt like I wasn't allowed to say no as well. I was like, I'm not allowed to tell him no, and I'm not allowed to say I don't want it, and it's valid for me to say I don't want to have sex with you right now, and I don't want to have sex with you at all even. So it's because we'd created this relationship structure, you know. I think that's quite a dangerous thing to do. That if you start creating this concoction, this structure about the fact that you're in a relationship, and you start bringing about all these rules about how your relationship should go, and all these structures around the roles that you play, that then you're not being authentic, so that you cannot actually be yourself and express yourself clearly with another person, because you're always trying to fit in to some kind of role, of relationship role, where you're having to force kindness all the time, or you're having to force understanding all the time, or you're having to force appreciation for the other person all the time. You're having to kind of force tolerance or something, or force acceptance of the other person. So you have to kind of shut down any anger that you might have. You have to shut down any negativity that you might have. You have to shut down any reality of feeling and reality of desire for other people. You have to hide so much stuff, because your role, the relationship role that you're playing, is all based around maintaining and continuing the relationship on. So you have to like pull back things that might rock the boat. So you have to be less true. You have to be less honest. You have to like not rock the boat, because if the whole point of the relationship roles are to maintain and keep the relationship going, even the fact of calling it in a relationship, by saying I'm in a relationship, that comes with a sense of monogamy or commitment, right? So even that's a structure in itself. It's like an imposition of, okay, so now we're in a relationship. Now we take on the idea of the relationship. Therefore, in order to maintain the relationship, we have to abide by rules of some kind, such as you don't break up. That's, you know, a relationship. It's like one of the clauses of being in a relationship is that you're together and that you've committed to being in a relationship with the person. So the removal of that clause is breaking up. But there's some understanding that you're not allowed to break up with a person. That's the thing. As soon as you say you're in a relationship, you've put this film over the top of it that says no breaking up, because we're in a relationship. And you have to fight past that understanding to be able to actually say, okay, well, I'm going to transgress against the breakup rule and I'm going to actually break up. Because obviously to break up with someone dissolves the structure idea of being in a relationship with them. So I'm trying to explain something that's a very strange idea, but I'm saying that when you hold onto the idea that you're in a relationship with someone, you kind of stop interacting genuinely with them. So if you're thinking about this is my girlfriend or boyfriend or wife or husband or partner or whatever, and you think of them in those terms, you no longer think of them in an authentic way. So you're thinking of them as uh, fitting into this role structure. And for example, I had it really clearly with the last girlfriend who I had, because she had this really strong relationship role understanding, which was it was naff. It was naff. And I didn't really have a relationship role understanding anymore. I was just being myself authentically. But she was playing the whole having to be nice to me. She was playing the love role. You know, there's a love role when you're in love with someone and you act like you're in love with them, and so you become a different person around them because you're in love with them. But I'm the same person with everyone. Kind of, with slight inflections. And so she didn't get it because it's an inauthentic role to play. You're playing a role rather than being yourself. So you're fitting yourself into this idea of what you are when you're in a relationship. Yeah. So, you know, which all has rules involved. Like you're not allowed to be angry, or you're not allowed to cheat, for example, as well. And then you might go against that rule. Like she went against the rule of cheating. Maybe that's kind of her rebellion against the role of being in a relationship, is that she wants to break those rules so that she can have some of her authentic self. She can allow herself to have her feelings, because the relationship role of monogamy does not allow for cheating, does it? So yeah, whatever. But with Charlie was a big thing with roles, and I was trying to get to a place where I was being authentic and understanding, and he couldn't really deal with that. He wasn't really on that same path, and I was trying to bring him to that path, but it wasn't working. Right, I think I'm going to stop now because my throat is starting to say stop. So overall, I'm just still haven't figured out the whole ins and outs of Charlie. Yeah, and I think I really need to do this Charlie relationship in even more depth. And then I feel like America is actually kind of done. I think the work we did on America in the earlier videos has covered it, so I might briefly go through that again. But Charlie needs a deep load of work still. America feels okay. Just breeze through that again. And then the hospital stuff is looming over me like this spectre of darkness, that it feels, well, on the one hand, it feels quite clear because my memories are quite clear of it. But on the other hand, it feels like there's so much information in there, I wouldn't even really know where to properly begin. And that feels very quite chaotic and confusing, and you can see my eyes darting around, you know, as I think of those memories. To talk about them is quite difficult. So basically what I'm trying to say is this is long and it's tedious, and although I am making progress and I'm feeling more coherent overall, even my artwork is starting to show this coherency thing. I'm not going to show you it, but yeah. Okay, bye. I'm done.